Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Real estate agent called to congratulate me. I didn't sell anything. Mom died quietly, so quietly that for days the house still smelled like her cinnamon tea, and I kept catching myself thinking she'd walk out of the kitchen any second and say, "Stop slouching, kid. Your back looks like an accountant after audit season." She didn't. At the funeral, my dad cried exactly long enough for people to murmur, "Oh, how tragic." Then, once everyone left, he wiped his eyes and snapped right back into what he'd been for most of my life, a manager of other people's resources, meaning mine. I grew up in the house everyone called our family home. 2 stories, wooden stairs that squeaked on the 3rd step, an old maple out back with a swing Mom hung there years ago. Mom bought that house, but the paperwork was always somewhere in Dad's safe. Dad loved the word safe because it sounded important, like investment portfolio. In reality, that safe held 3 things: his will scribbled on a napkin, a pistol he only pulled out to impress people, and a stack of old checks because he believed banks were a conspiracy against real men. My father could be charming, especially with anyone who might give him something. With me, he was practical. As a kid, I didn't call it contempt because I didn't know the word. I just knew the rules. 1, the older son is the helper. 2, the younger son is the sunshine. My half-brother showed up when I was 12. Dad's new wife, Sarah, walked into our home like she'd purchased it along with the air inside it. She brought suitcases, expensive perfume, and that look people use to judge a hotel floor. Is this place even worth stepping on? 2 months later, she ran the kitchen. 3 months later, she ran my dad. 6 months later, she was running my life. "You're the oldest," Dad would say. "You need to understand. We've got different circumstances now." "Like what?" I'd ask. "Now we have Braden," he'd say. Like Braden wasn't a child, but a government program that needed funding. Braden was the golden child. He got anything shiny. I got whatever builds character: work, responsibility, and silence. I started working at 15. After school, retail, weekends, warehouse, summers, construction. When I came home, Sarah looked at me like I'd dragged mud under her white carpet just by existing. "Don't stand in the doorway," she'd say, "and don't eat before dinner. It's rude." I'd stare at the fridge where everything had labels in invisible ink. Braden's yogurt, Braden's juice, cake for Braden, don't touch. Dinner was usually chicken and silence. Mom was still alive then. She tried to keep the balance like someone trying to stop a train with a spoon. At night, she'd come into my room, sit on the edge of my bed, and whisper, "You'll make it. Just hang on until you're 18. I thought she meant freedom, leaving, not hearing "you're the oldest" every 2 minutes. She meant the house. Because Mom knew exactly who she married. She knew that if everything was left to the family, my father would sell the maple tree itself just to buy Sarah a new SUV and Braden something for his development. So she did the thing my dad hated most. She did it properly. The house was in a trust, not by handshake, not the decent way, but legally. She set it up so that when I turned 18, ownership transferred to me. Not him, not us, me. And she didn't tell anyone outright, especially not me, because she knew my father could pressure, guilt, twist, and blackmail, and I was the easiest target. I was the oldest. After she died, I heard the word trust for the first time when the insurance company called and said I was the beneficiary. I remember thinking beneficiary sounded like a disease you treat with extremely expensive pills. After the funeral, Dad acted like the house was his reward for being patient. "Your mother left me a ton of paperwork," he grumbled, "but don't worry, I'll figure it out." Sarah stood beside him and nodded. Braden, meanwhile, was ordering limited edition sneakers with a budget I usually only saw on car listings. I moved out as soon as I could. First a room, then a tiny apartment. I studied, worked, built my life. With my father, I kept a polite distance. Birthday texts, an occasional "okay," and ignoring any variation of "you need to help the family." Until one day I got a call. Unknown number, middle of the workday. Coffee had stopped working. "Hi, this is Melanie from the real estate agency. Congratulations on a successful sale." "I'm sorry, on what?" The words didn't even process at first. "The sale of your house. Everything closed. County paperwork's already being recorded." You got lucky with the buyers. Cash, no mortgage. That's rare right now. My brain took a screenshot of reality and froze. I didn't sell anything, I said, very slowly. I didn't even know anything was for sale. Silence. The kind of silence you hear when a professional smells a lawsuit? Just a moment, Melanie said in a different voice. You're serious? Because in our file, you're the owner, and the signature, I didn't sign anything. Then who? She didn't finish, but I could practically hear the cabinet in her head labeled liability swinging open. I thanked her, asked her to send me copies of anything she could, and hung up. Then I called my father. Dad, I said, did you sell the house? He didn't even pretend to play dumb. Oh, you know already. Yeah, I sold it. You didn't have the right. Son, he said in that tone adults use to explain to a kid why the candy that fell on the floor is gone. It's just walls. It's not just walls. It's your brother needs it a lot more, he cut in. He's got problems, real problems. Something cold inside me turned white hot. What problems? He sighed like a martyr. Debt. What kind of debt? You know how young people are. They make mistakes. Say the number. A pause. Then, like he was tossing a rock into water, 500,000. I actually laughed. Not a laugh, more like my soul coughing. $500,000? Don't yell, he snapped. We handled it. We? Me and Sarah. Me and my family, he said. And you. You're an adult now. You'll manage. You sold my house to cover Braden's debts? I repeated, like I needed to hear it out loud. Don't be selfish, Dad said. You've always been, well, you know, cold. You didn't even deserve it. That didn't deserve it landed like a stamp on my decision. I didn't drive over there swinging fists and shouting. I did what they never expected from the oldest who just takes it. I called an attorney. Not a buddy who knows a guy, not a friend of a friend, a real attorney who handles trusts and real estate, an office that smells like liability insurance, not burnt coffee. He listened for 10 minutes, asked a few sharp questions, and said, okay, let's start simple. The house is in a trust? Yes. Then the sale is most likely legally void. And now there's only one question. How loud do you want this to explode? I thought about Sarah telling me years ago, you're only temporary here, and my father spending 2 decades treating me like disposable material. Loud, I said, very loud. The attorney smiled the way surgeons smile right before an operation when the patient finally stops Googling symptoms. The plan was simple and cruel, like a tax return. First, we pulled the trust documents and proof that after my 18th birthday, I was the only legal owner. Second, we filed an emergency motion to invalidate the transaction. Third, we placed a court hold on any actions involving the property and recorded a lis pendens, a public notice that the title is being challenged. Translation, the buyers now owned a house that was legally hanging in midair, and any bank, insurer, or sane person would run from that deal like potato salad left in the sun. Fourth, my personal favorite, we asked the court to freeze my father's accounts because the sale proceeds were tied to an unlawful transaction. The attorney warned, I can't promise the judge will grant it immediately, but if they do, it'll be beautiful. The judge did. A few days later, my father called with the voice of a man who just learned an ATM isn't his personal ATM. What did you do? My cards don't work. Wow, I said. Must be those just walls putting pressure on the banking system. You don't have the right. That's funny, I said, because I heard the exact same line about the house. He started yelling, then Sarah got on the phone. You're destroying this family, she shrieked. No, Sarah, I said, I'm just turning off the lights because the bill's in my name and you've been pretending for 20 years that was normal. Then the circus began, and the best part was they bought their own tickets. It turned out Braden's debt wasn't one bad night at a casino, it was a whole career. Through requests and documents, we saw the kind of spending that makes you want to cry and laugh at the same time. Loans for premium vacations in Vegas and Miami. Luxury car rentals because image matters. Rolex purchases as an investment. Yes, that's what he called it. Expensive hotels where he was recovering his nervous system. And, of course, bookies. $500,000 was the grand finale. Before that, it was years of little, oops, Dad, help. And Dad helped because Braden was our boy, and I was the oldest who would be fine. The best moment came after the sale when Braden kept gambling and didn't even hide it. He posted stories, champagne, clubs, a table full of chips, captioned, Dad handled it, and then, better yet, Big Brother didn't deserve it anyway. I showed it to my attorney. He raised an eyebrow and said, "I love it when defendants build our evidence folder for us. Saves me time, saves you money." The buyers loved the situation too. Their attorney called mine with the voice of someone who bought a boat and received an underwater rock. Dad tried bluffing. He even showed up at my place standing at my door like an actor late to an audition for Father of the Year. "Open up," he said. "Are you here as just walls or as a person?" I asked through the door. "Don't get smart. You're making a mistake. You sold something you didn't own. That was the mistake. I'm your father, and the house is mine." Sarah stood behind him, hissing, "He's ungrateful. Always has been." I opened the door just enough for them to see me without getting close enough to smell victory. "Listen," I said, "if you think this is a family conflict, you're wrong. This is a legal conflict, and you're not going to enjoy it." Dad stepped forward. "I did it for the family." "No," I said, "you did it for Sarah and Braden. I've always been your backup seatbelt, useful only when you're scared." His jaw tightened. "You want your brother to break? I want him to finally meet consequences, and I want you to meet them too." Court was like a TV drama, just without commercials, because my father was paying for it with his nerves. The deal was invalidated, legally void. That word hits like a slap. Void, meaning nothing, like my father's attempt to play owner. The house came back. Officially, county records, stamps, signatures, all the paperwork Dad always dismissed. Part of me wanted to print the deed and stick it on the fridge like a kid's drawing. Look, I made justice. But the sweetest part came next, because they'd already spent some of the money. Some was wired to Braden to take care of it. Some Sarah burned on stress relief that suspiciously looked like a renovation. Some went to urgent bills that were always urgent whenever their desires were involved. After the ruling, the lawsuit started. Not just mine. The buyers sued my father for fraud. The title company went after him for submitting invalid documents. Braden's creditors smelled blood and filed personal claims against him and Dad because Dad guaranteed and Dad paid. And it turned out Dad signed anything as long as you said the word family. When the court froze the accounts, Dad tried to pull cash. The bank said, of course, no. He called me with a voice that could narrate funeral home ads. "I'm broke," he said. "No," I said, "you're just seeing the bill for your choices." A few months later, he filed for bankruptcy for real. The house wasn't his, the car was leased, credit cards were dead. Sarah suddenly started getting tired of a marriage without money. An amazing transformation. A woman who loved stability stopped loving stability once it stopped paying. She left, and she took everything she could carry, especially what she'd once called ours. Braden, meanwhile, kept what he truly earned, debt. He tried to act tough online, but once collectors start calling, tough turns into, "Please don't call my girlfriend." One day, he called me himself. I was honestly surprised. His usual rule was that I existed only as background scenery. "Look," he said, "this has gone too far." "What has?" I asked. "The lawsuits, the money. Dad, he actually lost everything. He lost what he never had the right to take." "Yeah, but I didn't want him to. You wanted him to handle it," I said, "and he handled it, just not the way you thought." Braden was quiet, then muttered, "I need to get out of this." "There's an easy way," I said. "Stop doing new stupid things." "You're always so righteous," he hissed. "No," I said, "I'm just done paying for other people's games." Time passed. I started restoring the house, for the first time as mine. I fixed the roof Dad had patched with plastic like it was a budget Halloween costume. I repainted. I took down Sarah's curtains that practically screamed, "I run this place." Under the maple, I planted wildflowers. Mom loved wildflowers. I didn't do it with theatrics. I did it with the feeling of taking my life back. Then about a year later, a friend called. "You hear about Braden?" "What now?" I sighed, because with Braden, it's always what now. They got him. For what? He tried to run a scheme on seniors, some investment fund, guaranteed income, the usual. He got caught when one grandma did the wrong thing. She went to the cops. I sat down on the front steps and stared at the yard, the maple, the swing I'd kept because it was Mom's. And you know what? I didn't feel movie-style triumph. No fireworks, no victory music, just a quiet, heavy finally. Because this story isn't about me winning. It's about people who spent their whole lives thinking they could take what wasn't theirs until reality finally showed up. They thought a trust was about trust. But trust is when the law says, keep your hands off. And the best gambler in the family wasn't Braden. It was my father who bet everything on his favorite and lost it all. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.